Hey everybody! Today we're going to be learning about section 5.2, which is about clear cutting. The learning objective for today is that you can describe the effect of clear cutting on forests. You're going to be learning some of the benefits of forests, some of the disadvantages to cutting them down, some of the benefits of clear cutting, but then again, also some of the problems that come from it. So we're going to first start by just talking about the benefits that forests provide. And the first is going to be their ability to filter air pollutants. The stomata, which are the leaf pores in plants, are going to remove pollutants and nitrous oxide and particulate matter from the air, and then they're going to take it in and store it in the tree. So if you look at this diagram here, we've got all sorts of sources for pollutants. We've got vehicles, factories, a lot of other human-caused things. And these are going to congregate up in the atmosphere as what's known as smog, which is just kind of all of this pollution up there. And this smog in the air is actually going to be taken in by trees through the stomata. And those trees are going to convert them into different molecules that then will be stored. So essentially, these trees just clean the air for us and get rid of all the pollution that is in the air. And another benefit of trees is going to be their ability to remove and store carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So trees take in carbon dioxide through the process of photosynthesis. The carbon ends up in glucose molecules, which get stored in the tree, in like the wood and the tissue and leaves. And then the oxygen is going to be exited as a waste product, which then we get to breathe it in. So that's nice for us. But essentially, they are removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which we know as a greenhouse gas has a big impact on increasing Earth temperatures. So it's good to have it out of the atmosphere. And another benefit of forests is that they provide a habitat for organisms. So there's a lot of different organisms who live in forests, and this is going to cause quite a bit of biodiversity in these forests. Another benefit, though, at least for humans financially, is that forests are going to lead to ecotourism because of this biodiversity. Think of all the people who want to go out hiking in forests, not only just for the beauty of the trees, but also to see some of the other organisms that call these forests home. So it provides habitat, but also a benefit for tourism reasons. Now that we've talked about some of the benefits of forests, we are now going to talk about some of the consequences of removing these forests through deforestation. So one of the first problems that's going to arise is that when you take away these trees, you're going to lose the benefits that they provide. So it's going to reduce the air filtering and the carbon storing services that the trees provide. Additionally, not only are we no longer taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, but we're going to be releasing even more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere through decomposition of leftover organic material. So if you look at this picture here, there's a ton of parts of the tree that were just left there. And this is going to release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as these decompose. So more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is no good. Now, a couple things to be aware of for ways that deforestation occurs. The first is going to be known as clear cutting, and this is where you go in and you just cut down and remove every tree in an area. The other is going to be slash and burn, which hopefully the name kind of explains, but you can see a picture of it here on this slide. And this is predominantly used for agricultural reasons. And this is going to be a method of clearing the land for agriculture. So you go in and you cut the trees and you burn them, which is going to release carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. And it's also going to release water vapor into the atmosphere. And all of these are going to be greenhouse gases, which we don't want greenhouse gases because they lead to rising Earth temperatures. So when we are having clear cutting occurring, there's going to be some very direct effects that come from that. The first is going to be soil erosion. Now, when you are losing all of those root structures of the trees, you are no longer going to have that stabilizing in the ground. And so soil is no longer held in place. It's going to erode more. So it's going to result in removing soil organic matter and nutrients from the forest. It is also going to result in sediment being deposited in local streams, which is going to warm the waters and is going to make it more turbid, which just is the science word for meaning it's going to be more cloudy. So if you look at this picture here, where we have got clear cutting occurred in this area, lots of trees have been wiped out. And if you look down, this is going to result in really muddy streams here because we have all of this soil just washing straight into the streams, and it is very cloudy, as you can see, because of that clear cutting and the soil erosion that comes with it. Now, if you look at this diagram here, this is what's known as selective cutting, where you kind of pick and choose where you're cutting trees instead of just wiping them all out. So you can see that even just leaving a few trees, and especially a strip of it near the streams, is going to make it so that the streams are going to still be able to be clearer because you don't have that soil erosion coming, versus clear cutting where it's all gone and you just end up with a muddy stream. Now, another problem that comes from clear cutting is going to be increased soil and stream temperatures. So this first occurs because you're losing the shade from the trees, which is going to increase soil temperature. Because soil has a lower albedo, which means it is, when we're looking at the amount of sunlight that's reflected, so soil absorbs more of that radiation than the leaves of trees do. So it's going to lead to increased absorption and increased temperatures. Additionally, the loss of the tree shade along the rivers and streams is going to warm up the waters as well. And erosion of sediment into the rivers is going to make the rivers darker, which is also going to lower the albedo and is going to lead to warmer temperatures, which is obviously a problem for all the organisms who are trying to live in that water, who are going to need a more stable temperature in order for them to survive. And another problem that comes is going to be flooding and landslides. So the logging machinery that is used for clear cutting is going to compact the soil. It's also going to have increased sunlight, drying out the soil. And the loss of the root structure leads to erosion of the topsoil and depletion of that top O horizon. And all of these factors are going to lead to the decreased water holding capacity of soil, which is ultimately going to lead to flooding and landslides, which you can see here. Because you're not going to be able to have the water kind of trickling down and being held in by that O horizon, the water is either just going to flood off the top or it's going to oversaturate and just pull it all down because it's not able to properly percolate through, which is going to lead to landslides and flooding, which are obviously going to be no good. Look at the damage that they cause. Now, another thing that can happen with clear cutting, you often are going to hear a lot of tree logging companies talking about, hey, for every tree that we cut down, we plant trees, which obviously more trees is good. However, the way that they are planted is going to be these like tree plantations. These are going to be areas where the same tree species are repeatedly planted, grown, and harvested, because often these logging companies are going to come in and plant trees that are going to grow really fast so that they can come and cut them down in the not too distant future so that they can kind of continue the cycle of being able to continue with their profits and harvesting. So the problem with tree plantations is, first of all, that it's going to lower biodiversity. If you look at the top here, this is just going to be a natural forest as it would be on its own. On the bottom is going to be the tree plantation. And so you're going to have these more biodiverse mature forests replaced with single species forests, which leads to less species diversity, which, if you remember, less species diversity means lower resilience. If a disease were to come, this whole forest is wiped out when it's a tree plantation. It's also going to lead to less habitat diversity for other organisms. Birds live in different types of trees. Think of like how a woodpecker uses a tree versus a sparrow. They need different types of trees in order to do that. And when you have less tree diversity, it's going to lead to overall less habitat diversity and less ecosystem diversity as a whole. Another problem is the fact that with these tree plantations, all of the trees are planted at the same time, which means they are all going to be the same age. which is going to further lower the biodiversity. You're not going to have any dead trees for woodpeckers or insects or decomposers. And then also, if you think about the natural succession of trees with like old growths and how they are going to decompose and add back into the soil, it's actually going to be changing the natural succession of the forests because it's all happening at the exact same time. You don't have that natural cycling of like the old dying and the new coming. It's just all the same with the tree plantations. So for your practice FRQ for 5.2, you're going to describe an environmental concept and process. So I want you to describe 2 ecosystem services. So think back to making connections when we learned about ecosystem services. So describe 2 ecosystem services provided for humans by forests. And then I want you to explain how clearcutting would affect each of these ecosystem services that you described. So that is going to be your practice FRQ for 5.2, and those were your notes on 5.2 about clearcutting.